Are you living in the most expensive part of Greater Brisbane? We'll compare all 5 LGAs, and by the end of this video you'll know where are the most expensive places to live, at least as far as council rates and charges go. We'll also see what changes we can expect over the next year in Greater Brisbane's 5 LGAs based on where councils will be spending their money from those rates that many of us will be paying. This affects everyone, as even if you're renting, any extra costs that increased rates and charges bring your landlord will likely be passed on to you anyway. And I'm sure we would all like to know what will be changing in our cities over the next 12 months. Before we get to how much you'll be paying, we should look at where your money will be going in your LGA compared with the others. The first difference that's quite obvious is the size of the budgets. Brisbane's is by far the largest, with $4.1 billion. Ipswich expects to spend $678 million, Logan's is $1.22 billion, Moreton Bay has its first ever $1 billion budget, and Redlands is $503 million. But what's perhaps more important is where that money is being allocated. This is where we can look to understand the likely direction our cities will go over the next year. It's difficult to compare each council as the way they break up and present their information is different, so I'll approach each one by one, starting with Brisbane. Brisbane City Council is the only council in Australia to subsidise public transport, and transport makes up over $1.4 billion of the city's budget for the coming year. That's followed by infrastructure, things like roads, traffic signals and active transport infrastructure. 18% of the budget is allocated to the Sustainable City program, which aims to enhance Brisbane's environmental health, resilience and livability, and includes natural assets, drainage, waste services and disaster preparedness. Next is city governance, followed by customer service, with council announcing a new customer service portfolio within their civic cabinet, as I mentioned in one of the Brisbane Channel's recent weekly update videos. The Future Brisbane program is next, with an allocation of just under $165 million. This is focused on Brisbane's long-term growth, ensuring that the city can adapt to increased population, tourism and commercial activity into the future. The smallest proportion of spending is allocated to community and the arts. This encompasses activities designed to foster an inclusive, active and connected city, and includes improving inclusion within council and community and making council services and facilities more affordable to residents. The budget is not without its critics within Brisbane City Council. Labor, Greens and independent councillors have all expressed strong dissatisfaction with many elements of the budget, including the reason I can't break down the funding allocations in more detail for you. And while I was originally planning to include their arguments in this video, I think it's best to save that for a separate video of its own. Give me a few weeks, as I'd like to interview them myself rather than just relying on releases and blog posts that they've put out. Of course, make sure you're subscribed and have enabled all notifications so you don't miss that video when it does go live. For now, let's move to what Ipswich will be spending its funds on over the coming year. Of the $678 million budget, around $165 million is for capital works projects. Of that, almost $26 million is allocated to transport and traffic, which includes installation of footpaths, traffic systems, road safety improvements, active transport infrastructure such as cycleways, and road upgrades. Less than 0.5% of the capital works budget is for flood mitigation and drainage, while 11% is for parks, sport and environment. Beyond parks and sporting facilities, it covers nature reserves, stormwater management, wildlife crossings and waterway recovery. The 2% dedicated to local amenity covers things like revitalisation of Ipswich Central, curbing, upgrading and sealing gravel roads, and protecting trees in public spaces. The 1% for sustainability includes climate resilience and renewable energy projects, and the roughly $5.5 million for resource recovery is to maintain and improve resource recovery centres, as well as to purchase replacement commercial and residential bins. Disaster and natural hazard management has the smallest allocation, just under $500,000. One of the largest parts of the capital works allocation is dedicated to asset rehabilitation. The almost $48 million will cover things like maintenance or replacement of bridges, drainage infrastructure, roads, parks, footpaths, sports facilities, road surfacing and waterways. Fleet covers things like new garbage collection trucks and mowers. Roughly $54.5 million is for a range of projects, including $21 million for corporate projects, including the Nicolas Street Precinct redevelopment and upgrades to cemeteries, the Pound, community facilities, art galleries and libraries. Another $13 million is for flood recovery and voluntary home buyback. It's been a little harder to track down specific details of the Logan budget, but what I can tell you is that of the $1.22 billion budget, $146.8 million has been set aside for roads, not including pothole repairs, which gets $1.5 million on its own. Another big spend is on water and wastewater. Parks, including the Sturdy Park Drain Naturalisation and Waterford West District Park, get $15.9 million, and community infrastructure has been allocated $23.3 million. $12.25 million will go to the city's natural environment, covering things such as bushland and waterways maintenance, weed control, and educational activities and grants. Grassroots sporting infrastructure such as clubhouses, lights and scoreboards will enjoy $9.8 million worth of funding. Recovery from ex-tropical cyclone Alfred comes at a cost of $2.1 million, as we've mentioned in an earlier weekly update video. Logan City Council has also scrapped the $778 food van itinerant vending application fee to encourage new businesses and offer more options to the community. Now to Moreton Bay. For their first ever budget to exceed $1 billion, their spending is divided into 5 categories, namely vibrant communities, healthy environments, well-planned places, progressive economy, and engaged council. Well-planned places is the category that will see the largest chunk of funding, covering all kinds of infrastructure including roads, buildings, and urban planning. Next largest is Engaged Council, which has $99 million dedicated to customer service, but the biggest portion is merely depreciation of council assets. Healthy Environments covers natural areas as well as waste management. Vibrant Communities funding will go to community facilities including libraries and museums. The final category, which makes up just 2.7% of the total budget, is for economic development and attracting investment and tourism. Finally to Redland City Council, with a budget that just scraped through in the council chamber. For Redland, we'll first look at how the total budget has been divided up and then focus on the capital works budget. The whole $503 million is made up of employee costs, repayment of borrowings, right of use interest and lease repayments, materials and services, bulk water purchase, property, plant and equipment, borrowing costs, and other expenses. But of most interest to residents would likely be the capital works projects they can expect in the coming year. The total budget for those is over $151 million, and that's for transport, roads and traffic, infrastructure, community and cultural development, wastewater and water, open space, parks and conservation, marine and foreshore, and then all the things that don't fit into any of those categories. Here's the specific figures. If you've made it this far, congratulations. I'd really appreciate you giving the video a thumbs up, which will help make sure YouTube shows it to more people. And you can also share a link with anyone you know that may be interested by clicking the share button, obviously. Now let's get to how much all this spending we've just looked at is going to cost us all. Where are rates highest? Where are they going to increase the most? And what extra charges will we have to pay? But first, while we're talking about budgets, if you're planning to take a trip overseas, make sure you've budgeted for travel insurance. And the sponsor of this video is not just the winner of Best International Travel Insurance for Value in Finder's 2024 Travel Insurance Awards, but they're also a local Brisbane business. Wise and Silent Travel Insurance won the 2024 Value Award because it costs less on average, but covers you for more. They're also the official travel insurance provider for Australian passengers on Scoot Airlines. Backed by a global insurance provider and a 24/7 medical assistance team, the rave reviews on Trustpilot confirm that you can travel with total peace of mind if you choose Wise and Silent for your next overseas trip. Click this QR code or the link in the video description to get an exclusive 10% discount on your premium. Now back to the video. I'll start with the rates themselves. Now, not everything is as straightforward as it may seem at first, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let's just look at the average minimum general rates on a house for an owner-occupier. Lowest of all is Brisbane. The minimum annual cost for an owner-occupier is $913.36. In Ipswich, the average minimum rates in the same category will be $1,231. Logan homeowners will pay $1,616.24. The minimum will be $1,250 in Moreton Bay and $1,348 in Redland. This is after rates rose across the board compared to last financial year, but the increase was not consistent across the LGAs. In Brisbane, the average increase for an owner-occupier was $1.14 per week. In Ipswich, it was a $1.11 increase when looking at general rates without additional charges and levies. In Logan, the increase was $3.90 a week. In Moreton Bay, it was just 87 cents per week, and in Redland, it was $2.13 a week. But that's on average. The thing to keep in mind is that council rates are based on land values, which are set by the state government, and they can vary dramatically between and within suburbs. For example, despite the average increase in rates for Brisbane City being 3.87%, the suburb of Algesta, that's my suburb, will see its rates increase by 7.76% on average, while Parkinson, which is right next to Algesta, gets a 0.5% increase. I could not wrap my head around that when I found out. But if we look at the state's records for how much each suburb's land values have risen over the last 2 years, it makes a lot more sense. In Brisbane, Cowan property values rose by 80%, so the average rates rise in that suburb was 10.03%, while median Fairfield values saw no change over the last 2 years, so they got a 2.84% reduction in rates, along with 4 other Brisbane suburbs who also saw reductions. I didn't look into it for this video, but it would be pretty safe to assume there would also be wide variation when it comes to how much rates have increased in the other LGAs as well. Let me know if the increase in your suburb is different from the average figures I quoted earlier. One more thing to mention specifically for Brisbane City when it comes to rates is that from the 1st of October, the council will bring in new rating categories for units within the city frame, which will see the minimum rates increase by around $25 a quarter. This will not apply to current owners, but will apply to new unit owners after that date. But apart from the general rates, each LGA will have its own additional charges and levies. Brisbane charges an Environmental Management and Compliance levy at a minimum of $47.96 for owner-occupiers, a Bushland Preservation levy $33.60 as a minimum, and waste utility charge of $512.96. That waste utility charge has increased by $49.52 to include a green waste bin for all properties. However, if you opt out of having a green waste bin, you still pay the same fee as those who have one. Brisbane City Council is trying to encourage more green waste disposal to reduce waste filling the red bins. This is to reduce landfill waste, which attracts a state government levy that council and businesses must pay for their waste that goes to landfill facilities. It's estimated that the council could save between $2 and $3 million by diverting green waste from landfill. Ipswich has introduced a new infrastructure levy, which Mayor Teresa Harding says is to cover the costs of infrastructure projects necessitated by the LGA's rapidly increasing population that isn't being met by state government funding. We covered this in a recent weekly update.
Probably our biggest challenge is that lack of infrastructure funding from the state and the federal governments. And so things aren't sequenced as well as they could be. Residents get very frustrated that they've bought into a new estate, but there's no public transport, or there's no sporting field, or they have to wait 5 years before we can build a clubhouse on a sporting field. And that's just very frustrating.
On top of that, the waste utility charge will increase by $49 to $513 on the average residential property, and Ipswich residents will also pay an EnviroPlan levy of $63 and a rural fire levy of $3. While general rates mean an increase of $1.11 per week in Ipswich, increases in levies and charges mean homeowners will actually be paying $3.78 per week more in this financial year. In Logan, in addition to general rates, residents will pay $446 for waste management services, as well as an environmental charge of $108.40 per year and $1.64 for the volunteer fire brigade charge. In Moreton Bay, the city infrastructure charge for the rehabilitation and enhancement of transport and stormwater infrastructure will increase by $11 to $104 per property. The city environment charge will remain unchanged at $26 per property. The standard waste management service increased by $72, but is still among the lowest in southeast Queensland at $391 per year. It also includes free dumping of up to 3 tonnes or 26 loads of waste in addition to the curbside collections included. The garden organics collection service charge has increased by $3 from $67 to $70 for the year. Finally, in Redland, where we saw the highest increase in the minimum general rate at 7.89%, homeowners will pay $258 annually for the Environment and Coastal Management charge, which is $55.48 more than last year. The landfill remediation charge has almost doubled from $41.88 to $77.60, and the Redland City SES administration charge has increased by 76 cents to $7.40. They've also replaced the Southern Moreton Bay Island special charge with a citywide $6 rural fire brigade charge. On top of those, standard curbside waste collection will cost just over $650 on the mainland and just under $690 on the islands. Not everyone will pay all of those rates. There are a range of discounts and rebates offered across the LGAs for everything from paying on time to being a pensioner. So let's look at who will be saving money in each LGA. In Brisbane, the pensioner rates and charges rebate is 40% of the rates to a maximum of $1,298 per year, an increase of $50. Brisbane ratepayers also get a $60 discount per annum for paying on time. In Ipswich, the budget outlines a full pensioner remission of 100% of general rates, but to a maximum concession of $248 in any 1 year, and $10 a year for the Enviro Plan charge. Ratepayers who pay on time will get a discount of $132 for the year, the highest pay-on-time discount out of all Greater Brisbane LGAs. Logan's pensioners can save up to $469.04 annually. Logan has the second highest pay-on-time discount, $120 per year. Moreton Bay pensioners get a discount of $250 per year, but Moreton Bay is unique in that the council also offers a $75 annual discount for self-funded retirees, as long as they hold a Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. I couldn't find any information on Moreton Bay offering a discount for paying on time though. In Redland, pensioners receive a concession of $335 per year. There is no discount for paying on time. In the interest of creating an overall comparison, if we take the minimum general rates for an owner-occupier and add all the additional fees, levies and discounts for non-pensioners who pay their rates on time, here's how the 5 LGAs compare. For someone living on the mainland paying the minimum of everything, Brisbane will be the cheapest of the 5 LGAs to own a home in, at $1,448. Ipswich would be $1,773 for the year. Logan would be $2,052, Moreton Bay $1,771, and Redland would be $2,347. That's a difference of about $900 a year from the cheapest to the most expensive LGA. As I mentioned, I'll be doing a separate video on some of the arguments against Brisbane City Council's budget by non-majority Brisbane City councillors, and I'll also be putting out a video on the state government's budget allocations and how they affect Greater Brisbane LGAs. What changes can we expect to see as a result of those? But until then, here's the latest update video on the channel. I'll see you there or in the next video.